Boy, do we have an interesting guest for you guys today. I would dare say an awesome guest. Congressman Joe Walsh. He was a Republican from the 8th District of Illinois. Many described him as a Tea Party representative. We'll ask him in a second if he agrees with that. And now he has his own show in Chicago and in New York, the Joe Walsh Show. It's a talk show, and I can respect that. Now, there's going to be a ton of things we disagree on. Let me just give you props for at least being consistent, start off on a positive note, and turning down your government-provided health care when you were in Congress. So you didn't like Obamacare, you didn't agree with it, and then you turned that down. So good on you on that.
Boom. Cenk, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Now, the rest of the interview will be disagreements. Okay. So we've got a target-rich environment here in terms of disagreements.
You
right?
do.
Yeah. Okay, first, let me start out an interesting thing. It's not an important topic, but it helps to give me your frame of mind. Where was President Obama born?
Here.
Here in America?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Off to a good start. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Now, I can't tell you that for certain, but that's what I believe.
Okay, I mean,
That's a pretty good answer.
I'll take it. I guess we can't ever be certain of anything. Like,
Right.
I wasn't there when I was born.
He's American.
Okay, he's American. Okay, and you think he was born here?
I think he was.
Okay, all right. Good enough. I'll take it.
A lot of my listeners don't, Cenk, but I do.
Well, what do you think? Why do you think that is? Why don't they think he was born here? I mean, why? John McCain literally wasn't born in the country, but nobody ever brought that up.
Yeah. Well, the Senate did, and then they passed a law to make sure McCain would be okay. Republicans and Democrats did. I think the reason that people still feel that way about Obama, and a lot of people question his religion, is because, and you and I may disagree, I think he was the least vetted candidate in our country's history. He was like this mysterious guy. We weren't able to look into his past, his academic records, where he went to school, what kind of grades he went, all of that stuff. It's like he just appeared and we couldn't vet him. And I think that created a lot of fear and uncertainty in a lot of people.
Okay. That's, of course, one possible explanation. Not a bad one, because it's like a lot of progressives didn't know what they were getting with it, right?
Right.
So now, of course, I think race had a role to do with it. We could agree or disagree on that.
But you and I agree on that.
Oh, we do?
Oh, I think he got elected because he was black. I think that's it.
Oh, okay. So you're coming at it from a different direction.
Oh, I see what you're saying. But there is some racism in opposition to Barack Obama as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
So then let's go to that issue. Do you think that him being black really was a big advantage for him in getting elected?
Absolutely. It's the only reason he ran, and I'd argue it's the only reason he got elected.
Okay, now let's delve into that a little bit. Do you acknowledge that African Americans don't really have it easy in the country? That there's that if you're being pulled over by a cop, for example, you'd rather be white than black. Okay.
In this country, generally, still yes.
Okay,
absolutely.
So for the average white household, for example, has a wealth of about in the ballpark of about $150,000. It's gone down because of the crash in 2008, but still hanging in there. The average black household has a wealth of about $11,000. So you're starting at an enormous disadvantage, right? And so there's all these disadvantages. And he had some of those disadvantages. So do you see what I'm saying? It's not okay. I think I get what you're saying, which is that if he wasn't an African American and he was a person who just served one term and didn't particularly do much in that term, he might not have been in a position to attract some voters, but do you also get that he had monumental disadvantages?
And he had monumental advantages even for a black man. But Cenk, think about this. We basically elected a state senator as our president. He gets elected to the United States Senate in 2006. Within a week, he's running for president. He hadn't done anything before he ran for president. He's from Illinois, I'm from Illinois. He was an inconsequential state senator for 8 to 10 years. I think it's ridiculous that Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and Rand Paul all of a sudden think they want to be a president. Why don't you be a senator for 6 or 8 years? I think because Obama had his resume was so thin, if he were a white United States senator who just got elected, with his resume, there's no way he runs for president.
Well, let me make two counter arguments. One is Elizabeth Warren. So she's been a senator for about the same time that Obama was when he decided to run for office. I think if she ran, she would have an incredibly good chance of winning the primaries, and then I think the
probably
general
has
election.
a better, stronger resume than Obama did, though.
Right.
Correct?
So okay, so I think she does, and I think that she's taken on the banks in a substantial way. I would make a case that she has a much better resume than Obama does, but still, she's a young senator, so it's not like it's not possible for senators who haven't been around for a long time to run for president. Certainly possible. And then, and Joe, it's not just that Obama was hey, look, there's a random black guy from Illinois, let's go, right? So in 2004, he gave a brilliant speech, and so it gave people the impression, and not wrongly so, that he could inspire a lot of people.
Think about what you just said. He gave a speech. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, he's a presidential candidate based on one speech. Look, whites voted for him because it alleviated white guilt. It made them feel good and cool. Cenk, I had so many Republican friends before that 2008 election who were embarrassed to say they were supporting McCain because it was cool to support this guy. That's what it became.
No, but Joe, there is something about good speeches. When you convey what the American people are thinking, and you do it in a way that they couldn't do it themselves, and they go, yeah, that's what I want. That's what I think.
One speech.
No, but it's not just one speech. And then during the campaign, he had a great speech on race. I wish he'd applied that a lot more when he was president. It was a great series of speeches. Now, look, not enough substance. I agree. At that point, I had my concerns. His mentor in the Senate was Joe Lieberman, and a guy that I totally disagree with, et cetera. But you can't just dismiss those speeches as no big deal because, look, there are great orators throughout history. Martin Luther King, now he did many other things than just give speeches, JFK, FDR, et cetera. But speeches matter because if you're trying to represent people and you say, these are my ideas, and they say, yes, I agree, that matters.
Yeah, but Cenk, why did people vote for him? Do you think people voted for him based on anything he had done? I don't know of anybody who voted for Obama because of anything he'd done.
But Joe, they voted for him because they agreed with him. So, or at least they thought they agreed with him. So, I mean, if you pick random black people, which the Republican Party does, it's not like black people support them or it's cool to support them. Herman Cain, Alan Keyes. So how come 90% of black people didn't vote for Herman Cain?
Well, right now, 95 to 97% of black people are going to vote Democrat no matter what. So that's a given. I'm talking primarily about white people. It became, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. This is a smart, good-looking, articulate black guy. Who said that? Was that Biden? Something silly like that. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, everybody just jumped on the bandwagon, not really understanding, I think, Cenk, where this guy stood on issues. Nobody could tell me they're voting for him because of anything he'd done. People would vote for Elizabeth Warren based on some of the things she's done. You didn't have any of that with Obama.
Yeah, I just don't, like, if it was such a great advantage to be black, then I think we might have had more than one black president.
He wouldn't have run if he was white. I think,
Joe, to be fair to you, I actually think that's your best point, that if he had the same record and he was white and he was a great speaker, maybe it wouldn't have captured the imagination in the same way that it did. But you also have to concede that as an African American, he also faced a lot of hurdles that he wouldn't have faced just to get to where he is.
Right, but by that time, by the time he became a candidate, it was all advantage. His race was all advantage. It's what made him different. It's what made him sexy. It's what made him a celebrity.
No, and then, look, I supported Obama against Hillary Clinton. At that point, it's not like I'm thinking, or anybody on this show, or anybody who takes the issue seriously goes like, I find the guy sexy.
You know what I mean.
It's not cool to vote for him.
He became a celebrity. Oh gosh.
No, Jojo. I'm not saying that it's that
it became.
I'm cool. Saying no. It was comparing him to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was clearly more conservative. So I agreed, even though I was cautious, I agreed more with Barack Obama. You've got to acknowledge that that's an overwhelming majority of why people voted for him.
In the Democrat primary, I think Hillary Clinton ran as a queen, and she didn't see this Obama thing coming. In the general election, Cenk, I can tell you, so many white, middle-of-the-road folks looked at McCain, and they looked at this cool celebrity that was being lifted up, and they said, I want to be part of that. Even a lot of my Republican friends did that.
Yeah,
Peggy Noonan got caught up. I mean, so many Republicans got caught up in this thing.
Yeah, I'm a lot more skeptical about that. Out of the guys running now, you mentioned, because you brought it up, Rubio, Rand Paul, and Ted Cruz, you think it's too early for them. Who do you like in the 2016 race?
I think Hillary is inevitable. I would love your thought on Elizabeth Warren. I right now don't think there's a Republican that can beat Hillary. I think Hillary learned from 2008, and she's going to run as a woman, and America's going to get caught up in the woman thing. To balance that, to maybe try to beat it, I love a boring, competent governor. Give me Scott Walker. Give me John Kasich, Ohio. Give me one of these governors who's maybe not the most exciting thing in the world, but they've done something.
So that's interesting. You know, it's funny you say that, because I was going to, you said blacks vote 95, 97% Democratic no matter what. You actually said Democrat, but that's actually not true. John Kasich got 26% of the black vote in Ohio. So, which speaks well of him. He reached out. So, okay, that's a good answer. I like that answer. And yeah, I think Elizabeth Warren could.
Do you think she'll run?
I think her saying she could easily beat Hillary Clinton is overstating it, right? But I think she could beat Hillary Clinton. She has a really good chance of beating her. Hillary Clinton making the same mistakes she made last time, already prepping for the general election, going to the right, and you actually have to run a primary first. And if somebody runs to the left of her, and Elizabeth Warren, to your point, is also a woman, so you're still voting for a woman, right? She's very accomplished, has a record of being a real progressive as opposed to Hillary Clinton, right?
Absolutely.
Hillary Clinton is accomplished. She just doesn't have the record as a progressive that Elizabeth Warren does. So, I think Hillary Clinton's enormously beatable.
Cruz and I probably agree on every single issue. I think he could do more good for the conservative movement in the Senate. I think Rubio's too new. Rand Paul's intriguing because he can reach different constituencies, but the rush to run for president, I just don't get it.
So I don't agree with Ted Cruz on anything. I don't think, but we'll find out.
Yeah, you may not actually.
Okay, so let's go to your central thoughts here. So, you're for cutting capital gains tax, corporate tax. Tell me if I'm wrong on any of this, and eliminating the estate tax. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I'd blow up the IRS. I'd start over.
And then what would you do?
I would have, you and me would sit down at a table and we'd pick a simple flat tax for everybody in the country, 11, 12, 13%, whatever it is.
Okay.
And none of this, Cenk, will happen. I'm telling you, if I were
king, I got you.
If I were king for a day.
So the reason I love doing these interviews is because I want to begin to understand each other. So do you get that if we did a flat tax that it would appear to be really unfair to people who make less money as opposed to people who make more money?
And I think before this hour's over, you and I are going to have 4 or 5 things we're going to agree on.
Okay.
The IRS code sucks. It's complicated, it's convoluted. And because of that, big business and wealthy dudes, wealthy guys, are able to take advantage of the complexity, hire accountants and lawyers, and they end up coming out paying as much as you and I do. All the research I've looked at, Cenk, says if you simplify and flatten the code, the wealthy will end up paying more if that's what you want.
So, no. So I agree with the first part. I don't agree with the second part. Yeah, I mean, Mitt Romney hires an accountant, moves his money offshore to the Cayman Islands.
Get rid of all those loopholes.
Yeah, okay, so you want to get rid of loopholes. I'm right there with you. But then if you say the guy making $25,000 a year should pay the same rate as the guy making $250,000 or $2.5 million, there's no way I agree with that.
Okay, so we're halfway there. Get rid of loopholes you and I would agree on.
Now,
and then you tax
but let's
people
just be slightly clearer about that, right? So if you're talking about, all the different subsidies, yada, yada, yes. But and ultimately, you might be surprised to find out that I would probably agree with you on the mortgage deduction too. But the country's not ready for that.
Not even close.
Right. And I wouldn't do that now because I think that a lot of people relied on that, a lot of people in the middle class. And so I can't just say blanket get rid of every deduction, okay, charitable deductions, et cetera, right? So that's just the reality. But okay, let's just keep going though. So you still think the guy making $2.5 million should pay the same percentage as the guy making $25,000?
Again, if I'm king, no matter what your income is, everybody should pay the same rate. And you and I would disagree on that.
Right.
Look, Cenk, we have a government that's too big, that does too much for too many people. I don't know how you fix that, because Medicare's got a short shelf life. Social Security's got a short shelf life.
It's not true.
Oh, gosh. And look, when I was in Congress, what I hated was Republican were like cutting all these nickels and dimes in the non-defense discretionary spending piece of the pie. You know and I know what's killing this country outside of defense, and defense is too big, is all this entitlement stuff.
Yeah, no, agree to disagree.
That's what we have to reform.
So we'll get to that in a second. But Joe, I don't know, what your financial situations have been. I mean, it's been in the news a little bit, but I've been really poor. I've been middle class, and then when I was on TV, I made good money, right?
Me too.
And I can just tell you that paying higher percentage taxes when you're making good money is so much easier than paying any taxes when you're not making any money, right? When you're making, and I've made $24,000 a year. I've made less than that, et cetera. Then every piece of tax is killing you, right? But you make a good amount of money, and I get it. Hey, look, how did I make the money? We got roads, we got infrastructure, I got an education, et cetera. All this, was helped by the rest of the community, right? So I don't mind paying back what's wrong with that concept?
Well, I don't believe in progressivity. I mean, I don't believe, you should not, and you'll disagree with the term, penalize people for making more money.
I'm not penalizing them. I say, God bless you, brother. I want to make more money. I want to be super rich,
well,
right? But I don't mind paying my fair share when I get there.
You're paying your fair share. 13%
ain't anybody's fair share.
But you're not paying 13%. The average American,
Under your flat tax, I'm saying.
Well, but that's okay, so 13% federal, then you got state, then you got local, then you got sales taxes, you got everything.
You might get all the way up to 2025.
No, you'll get up to 35 to 40. Right now, the average American's paying almost 50% in taxes at all levels. Our founders would run through that wall to stop that. 50 cents, Cenk, out of every dollar you make.
I read a lot of founding fathers on watch out for corporations, watch out for the big banks. I haven't read a lot about, hey, watch out for marginal tax rates.
Oh, but no, watch out for government. I mean, that's what started the country. Watch out for big, oppressive government.
But how does building a bridge oppress me? Like, I get how the big defense budget oppresses me. I get it when they spy on me, that oppresses me, right? And so I'm not in favor of big government for big government's sake. That's crazy. I actually think the whole conversation about big or small government doesn't make any sense. The question is, what are you trying to do, right? It's like asking, hey, do you want a big pipe or a small pipe? I don't know. It depends on the job. So if you tell me big defense budget, or in reality, offense budget, I say no. If you tell me a big budget because somebody would like to retire and they worked their whole lives and they put into it, I say yes.
Maybe this is semantics. I think we've got our government doing too many things, a lot of things it shouldn't do. And I wish it would go back to its core functions and do them well. You and I may disagree on the entitlements. I wish the government took care of those who can't take care of themselves. Right now we live in
you do think
Oh,
that?
Absolutely, Cenk. Right now the problem is, though, we live in a country where government is taking care of people who can take care of themselves. And like in Illinois and really around the country, needy people are getting screwed.
So, okay, then let's ask about that. And I'm going to come back to what you're calling entitlements in a second. We got $40 billion in oil subsidies going out.
Get rid of them.
You'd get rid of all of them.
Get rid of corporate welfare, get rid of welfare.
Right. Now,
absolutely.
So I hear from time to time principled conservatives saying that and libertarians saying that. I have a hard time believing them.
Because I was in the minority, by the way, in the party, because I voted to get rid of loopholes, and I was in the minority in my party. Me, Ron Paul, and Dennis Kucinich sponsored a couple bills to get rid of loopholes, and the Republicans shouted it down.
So do you acknowledge that the Republican Party is by far and away more in favor of the oil subsidies and all these different loopholes that actually benefit corporations?
Democrats love big government. I'm going to be really simple. And Republicans love big business. Those are the altars they worship at. Absolutely.
Do you acknowledge that, the main thing we fight against in the show and on Wolfpack is a PAC that we set up to get money out of politics, is the corruption that comes with the money in politics. So what I always ask conservatives, and there's plenty of conservatives that work in Wolfpack too, because they don't like the corruption either, is, okay, if you think big government is corrupted, who do you think corrupted them?
A number of special interest groups, including big business. no doubt about it, as a special interest group. But they're not alone. The teachers union pounds government all the time. Other unions do. A number of special interest groups work full-time to get what they can out of government, including big business.
Okay, so, you know, we are having slightly more agreement than I anticipated, which is a great thing, not a bad thing, right?
This was supposed to be great.
All right, okay, no, this is great. So, but let's dive in more because the devil's in the details. So, if you say to me, I don't want the union spending money on politics either,
no,
I agree.
No, let me, and here's where we may go our separate ways. My ideal campaign finance reform is no limits, instant disclosure. Anybody can give as much as they want to any candidate, but then every voter has to know that second who gave money. I'm a big gun guy. If some wealthy dude loves the fact that I love guns and he wants to give me $1 million, bring it on. But then every voter should know that this big wealthy gun guy just gave me $1 million.
Okay, so two things about that. One, it's super unrealistic because how are they going to know? Like, you can announce it once, but they're not going to go to the website and stuff.
It's up to voters to get off their rear end and get engaged and get
but
informed.
the money buys you the ads that trick people into thinking that you're for one side when you're not necessarily on that side. So you can't just say, hey, get up off your ass when somebody's spending $1 million, $10 million on ads to deceive folks.
No, but Cenk, you got to be an informed voter. I mean, part of it, look, I spent my 2 years in Congress ripping John Boehner, ripping John McCain, ripping Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi, but they're not the problem. The reason the country is struggling right now is because the American people aren't doing their job and staying liberal and conservative.
That's easy to say, but
it's true. Staying informed and staying engaged.
It's not this. I never blame people for that. If you're a dentist out there, it's not your job to know the nitty-gritty of politics. That's my job, okay? Nope. So I know you're supposed to be an informed citizen, et cetera.
Absolutely.
But there are people spending millions, billions of dollars to misinform you. You can't blame the people who are at the butt end of that. You got to blame the people who are doing it. Joe, how can you not see that if somebody gives you $1 million, if, let's say you're the most principled person on earth and you're not going to be beholden to them, that the average guy, and certainly the average politician, would be very beholden to them.
Then improve the quality of people we send to D.C. Period. Cenk,
on both sides, the people taking bribes?
On both sides. It's not, look, some do, it's not though. People generally who gave me money because I'm pro-gun. No anti-gun person's going to give me money because I want to cut taxes, because I believe in school choice,
Joe, why
because
do you
I want to
think
send
they gave you that money? First of all, if the NRA gave you money, they don't represent honest Americans who are pro-gun. They do to some degree, and I know they got a good database. But they mainly represent the people that give them the bulk of their money, which is gun manufacturers.
Oh.
So, of course, the gun manufacturers are going to funnel money to you if you're pro-gun.
But again,
and on the issue of cutting taxes, you think that they're like, I believe in the freedom agenda. No, they want lower taxes, so they give you $1 and they get $2 back in tax cuts.
But again, Cenk, you're right. People who give money to candidates tend to give money to candidates who they philosophically agree with. And then, yes, certainly, they'd love to influence them. You can't stop that. How do you get money?
I can.
No, you can't. You can't get Cenk.
Well, yeah, I can.
Well, you can legally and put people in jail if they take bribes and are influenced.
The
and
whole
not every
system's based on bribes, Joe, and your system would be based on bribes. You say, hey, give me $1 million, and people don't do it out of the goodness of their heart. Keating, and remember the Keating scandal, Keating 5, John McCain was involved a long time ago, and they asked him, this is paraphrasing, but they asked him, hey, did you expect something in return for the money you gave me? He said, yeah, I'm a businessman. Of course I expected something in return.
Absolutely, that's there. But look how screwed up the system is now. You know me because you know my history. I was the poorest member of Congress.
That's true.
I had to run around and beg people for $2,000 a pop because that was the limit. Because they put these limits on what you can give to a candidate. Okay, so who does that favor? Wealthy guys. Because if you're a billionaire liberal or a billionaire conservative, you don't have to spend 10 hours a day raising $1,000 here and there. So, yes, paradoxically, liberal candidates, wealthy candidates, it's made it easier for them to run for office.
So there's very rare billionaire candidates like Bloomberg in New York, for example, right? But what is not rare at all is billionaire donors who then say, hey, what am I going to run one person at a time, me for? Which, by the way, David Koch tried in 1980. He ran against Ronald Reagan. He got clowned, and then he realized, oh, no, let me go buy everyone else, okay? So then they're going to spend about $900 million in 2016. They're going to spread that around to Senate, Congress, and President, and then they're going to have them in their pocket. You think those, remember the fake call to Scott Walker, the guy that you mentioned that you like? When somebody pretending to be one of the Koch brothers called in, oh my, Walker was like, yes, sir, absolutely, sir. How can I help you, sir? Of course he's going to do that. That's human nature.
Congress is full of millionaires. Congress is wealthier than the population at large by far. Why is that? Because we've made it really hard for average guys and gals to raise money. So you put limits on what you can give a candidate. Look what that did. It created these super PAC things.
There's almost no limits now, Joe.
On what you can directly give a candidate.
First of all, they can just do independent expenditures. That's so easy, so brazen, et cetera. Now they can give more to the political parties, even when you were in office, and the list goes on and on. Look, no, if you say, hey, it's a pain in the ass to raise money small, for example, if you did public financing of elections, okay? Now, you conservatives think that they hate that. You couldn't be more wrong. That's the one thing that destroys crony capitalism, okay? Because if you're getting a paycheck, or if you're getting a big check from somebody, you're going to serve that person. If you're getting a check from the people, then you at least have a chance of serving them. And the amount we spend on that is tiny relative to the $40 billion in oil subsidies, relative to all the loopholes you're talking about, relative to all the crony capitalist billions and trillions of dollars we flush down the toilet in our big government. Okay, exactly. So and if you did public financing, yeah, you got to go to your neighbors and say, hey, Bob, I need $100. Susie, I need $100. And so you actually have grassroots trying to reach your voters. And then once you reach a certain level, and then you get financing, and then everybody's on an equal playing field, and then we have a battle of ideas. Isn't that what you want?
You're probably not a George Will fan, and I'm not often as well, but we spent more money on French fries in 2012 than we did on all the campaigns and elections in the country in that presidential year. We spent more on French fries in 2012 as a country than we did donating to candidates.
First of all, I don't know if that's true, but second of all, it's irrelevant,
it's not a lot of money.
You know it's irrelevant.
It's not a lot of money.
No, what do you mean? And, we spent billions of dollars. Those people didn't put in the billions of dollars for their health. They put it in because they knew they'd get tens of billions back. Look, so when you say that, when the Coke industry says, hey, make sure you don't raise the minimum wage.
By the way, it's not only wealthy conservatives who play that game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you say, hey, are you willing to ban George Soros, Bloomberg, whoever it is, from putting money into politics? Absolutely. I'd ban them in a second.
Ban any... What would you do? What would you, outside of public financing, what would your campaign finance reform be?
In my opinion, and you can get into get granular on the solutions here, but one, public financing of elections, then you just can't take money. And so that pretty much ends the conversation right there. It doesn't matter if it's Koch or Soros or the guys that Roe put together or the guys that Democracy Alliance, a liberal group, put together. You can't take their money. It's public financing, right? And then number two, I would end corporate personhood, because corporations are the faucet. And if you don't turn off the faucet, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to bribe every politician in the country to get every tax break, to get deregulation, to get all, and to get so they can pay their workers less. They're gonna do it. They have been doing it the last 40 years, and it's killing us.
It'll never happen. You cannot get money out of politics. And I love that you're passionate about the issue, but it goes against every fiber of freedom in this country. You want to run for office? Cenk, you want to run for office, and you'd be a great candidate. You should be able to go out there and spend whatever amount of your own money that you want to spend. Nobody should tell you you can't spend what you want to spend to try to get elected. Not in a free country.
No. If you say that I got, for example, Sheldon Adelson has freedom of speech, and he should be able to give as much money as he wants to Newt Gingrich or then to Mitt Romney,
and the teachers' unions, and
anybody he likes. Okay. All right. Well, that's, first of all, we can limit freedom of speech in 100 different ways that are reasonable. I am an enormous freedom of speach advocate. That's what I do for a living, is I talk and I say controversial things.
Did you publish the Charlie Hebdo cartoons?
Yes, we did.
Good for you. Thank you.
But you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You can't, and there's a great number of place-time restrictions on speech that the Supreme Court has already decided. And this is, when you say, I'm going to get a megaphone, I'm going to spend $1 billion, and you're going to spend $10, that is not a free and fair election. Okay, why do you think we only have millionaires in office? Partly because they're the only ones who know other millionaires, and that's how they raise the money.
We have millionaires in office because they're not limited on what they can put into a campaign. I have to go out and raise it.
No, they go and raise the money anyway. They hardly ever put their own money in.
Oh my gosh,
no, they know. Look, I know a Democratic guy who was going to run for office, and the Democrats pulled him aside. They didn't ask him what his policy positions were or anything. They said, how many are you rich, and how many people do you know that are rich? And the second question is even more important. He wasn't that rich, but he knew a lot of rich people. They're like, that's it, you're in, you're our candidate.
Congress is full of self-funders, Republican and Democrat, Cenk. I saw them. They're full of self-funders.
So Joe, I asked you the same question then, which is, do you think we have free and fair elections when only millionaires and people who know millionaires can run and win?
I think we need more average people to run. And I think the only way you get more average people to run, here's what I'm more concerned about, Cenk. That damn body is full of millionaires, Republican and Democrat. It does not represent this country as a whole. If you want it to represent the country as a whole,
what you could do? You could do public financing.
No.
but look, so Joe,
get rid of limits.
Okay, no, that's crazy talk.
Absolutely.
We already got rid of limits. That's the hole we're in.
If I've got a liberal, wealthy friend and he wants to give me money, let him. And then again, with today's technology, you can disclose instantly. And you can.
First of all, the Republicans fight that. They won't let you disclose
They're wrong on that.
Okay.
Republicans don't like disclosure.
And the Supreme Court said you should disclose it, but they never disclose it anyway, because once you allow unlimited money, what do the guys say? Look, I'm bribing you. I don't want people to know I'm bribing you. Of course don't disclose that. And I already bribed you, so vote my way. They do.
Oh, I know. Right. Politicians in general don't want the disclosure.
Let me give you one last example, then we'll move on to other issues. Look, they have public financing in Maine. They have a very Republican, very right-wing governor. So it's not like that you have a real debate on the issues. It's not like progressives always win when there's public financing.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.
But I know a woman there who's a state legislator, and she works at the local grocery store. She doesn't own the local grocery store. She works the cash register at the local grocery store. She won the election. She ran the election on $250. Okay. Because once you raise a certain amount of money, then she's in the ball game, and then they publicly finance the elections. See, then you would have real people representing the Americans, Joe. That's what you think you want. You'd have past legislative because she won the battle of ideas.
All right, we'll end this issue with common ground. I ran for Congress in '96, and I said at the time I would either have no limits, full instant disclosure, or public financing, because either one of those is better than what we have now. I'll grant you that.
Okay. All right, so now let's go back to the what you call entitlements. Now, look, I say Social Security and Medicare. Medicaid's different. Social Security and Medicare are entitlements because you are entitled to them because you put your money into them your whole life. Okay.
I cannot disagree with that.
Okay, great. So now Social Security is solvent until 2037. Even then, even in the worst case scenario,
2027 I've heard, but go ahead.
2037 is, I read in a dozen places, if not more. Okay, that is one of the most solvent government programs there is. And then on top of that, even in the worst case scenario, you don't put anything more in, you don't do any fix, tweak, whatever you want to call it. It still pays at 75% of your proceeds going forward, right? So now we pretend that there's this massive problem, so we have to cut it today. No, but people paid into that their whole lives, and those are the people who need it most. So no, we don't have to cut it today.
Here's the problem. Social Security aside for a second, the single biggest driver of our debt is rising healthcare costs. We live at a cool time. You and I are going to live till we're 95, and we're going to be active.
I hope so.
But this country's got to pay for all those healthcare costs. We got 11,000 people retiring in this country every freaking day. The average Medicare recipient today, Cenk, it put in a third of what he or she is getting back. So this just ain't sustainable, is what I'm saying.
But Joe,
Obamacare,
then you should be thrilled about Obamacare, because we have now, for the first time in a long time, decreasing increases of healthcare costs.
Yeah, but they're starting now to come up again. And by
no. Every number I've seen. And look, I got my own issues with Obamacare. I think he should have done more, and I think it's a lot of half measures, yada, yada. But even I've been pleasantly surprised. I thought he left the insurance companies still in charge. and I thought that they were going to increase the costs. But I had to acknowledge, wait, now I was a little wrong about that because the costs of actually, our costs here at the company went down for the first time ever. Right?
Yeah, but Cenk, it's not the story around the country. And right now, most studies seem to show that 70% of any slowing down in the increase in healthcare costs is due to the recession. I mean, people just simply were not using insurance and getting coverage because it was too expensive.
I know that most of the gains of the so-called recovery went to the top 1%, but we've been out of the recession for some time.
Sort of, maybe.
And so,
sort of.
Look, if the prices were going up, you certainly would blame Obama for it, right?
Oh, no, and it's beginning to. And in fact, the CBO came out this week and they said the curve's doing this. And they came out this week and said by 2020, 10 million Americans in employer-based plans are going to lose their plans. So this thing's a problem.
Mm-hmm. So look,
it's a bigger entitlement.
So yes, so healthcare has always been an issue.
It's a biggie.
Right, and at least President Obama tried to tackle it. And it looks like initially there's a lot of good signs. Okay, now, the Republicans, they always love to pick it apart, and then whenever you say, what's your alternative? Right, so what's your alternative?
They don't have the courage and they're afraid to say what they need to say.
Right, so what's your alternative?
Which is this. The needy in this country, government pay for all of their health care, 100%, put them on government-run health care. Everybody else, you got to get out there and fend for yourself and somehow create a market for health care for everybody else, which, by the way, Cenk, was what Medicaid was designed to be, the health care system for the indigent. It's what Medicare was supposed to be for senior citizens, those of need. My mom and dad are 82. They do pretty well. They primarily live off of Medicare. It was never designed to be there for people like them. But see, when a Republican talks that way, good night, you're in trouble. You're going to lose the old people vote or the middle class vote because everybody now is either on Medicaid or Medicare. And it's not sustainable.
Mm-hmm. So, if you were going to revamp the whole system, then we'd be having an entirely different conversation. Let me ask one last thing on that specific policy issue. We push for a public option because the public option isn't taking over the whole system. It's not single payer, okay? And I'm more of a moderate in I used to be a Republican. I was a liberal Republican, but on fiscal issues, I'm a lot more moderate, right? So I thought, well, I'm not sure single payer is the right thing. Now, I think a lot of people make good arguments on that. But what in the world is wrong with a public option? So you got your 1,000 private options. Why don't you give me a public option and see how I like it? What do you think?
Quality of care will suck. It will lead to rationing.
Okay, then people, no, but then people won't use it.
It's Greece. It's Greece. It would be Greece.
But Joe, but that's easy. Then you should say yes. Okay, then you'll see. Okay, look at that. You had an option with the government and it sucked. We were right. The private options were much better, and it goes under. That's it.
Isn't the problem? And you're a business guy. Isn't the problem, Cenk, that healthcare in this country is just not a market for most of us? Forget about the needy.
That's why
it's not a market.
That's why I say if you're going to rebuild the whole system, yes, then then we might agree on some fixes, like having it be employer-based doesn't make much sense.
But you're saying it's too hard to get there.
It reduces the competition and stuff. I want competition. I believe in competition, and I believe that it would help healthcare.
Insurance.
Okay, but public option is also competition. It's competition towards private industry. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it does work, great. There's no downside.
If you can guarantee you're going to make it very optional, and if you can guarantee that it's going to be for those who need it. But this country will die fiscally unless we have an honest talk with the American people and say, baby, your health care responsibility is yours. You go out, to the average person, you go out and find it, you shop for it, you pay for it. If we don't do that, we're sunk.
Okay, no, look, I think the reason why this is an interesting and fruitful conversation is because you're not, I don't toe the Democratic line and you're not toeing the Republican line. So if you were, it'd be less interesting because the Republicans don't have any proposals, right?
No, and if Paul Ryan were sitting right here, because I've had this conversation with him, he'd be furious that I just said that.
Okay.
Can't do that. Can't
All right,
say that.
So now let's go to more issues we have disagreement with on occupied territories. I think we're going to have significant disagreement on this. You think what? Israel should annex them?
Oh, you're not going to like me. I introduced a bill, I think in 2011, that called for a one-state solution. Just make it Israel all the way, baby. The Palestinians can go to Jordan. They can go wherever they want.
You're right. I don't like that position.
I think the two-state solution, my friend, just ain't tenable. And jump on me, as long as one of the neighbors refuses to acknowledge the right of this neighbor to exist. As long as you've got that.
I totally agree with that.
You're never going to have two neighbors living side by side.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that. And so that's why Israel should allow the Palestinians to exist, to have their own nation. One side, first of all, Mahmoud Abbas and Fatah says they have the right to exist, and Hamas says, no, hold on. They've said it 100 times. If we get to a negotiation table, then maybe we could rethink that position. So in reality, that's not really that big of an issue. If it was, then then I agree with you. Okay, the other side says, I control the territory. I have my army in there. You're not allowed to exist. Isn't that much worse?
They teach their kids daily to hate and blow up Israelis.
If Illinois was, and first of all, that's horrible. I've made fun of it on my show. They have the stupid bee that goes out and
summer
like
camps,
a Sesame Street,
camps,
right? So of course, I agree with that. But why do you think that they hate those people that much? Why have we gotten into this situation? So, for example, look, things were not rosy under the Ottoman Empire. It was an empire, right? And they collected taxes, and if you opposed them, they crushed you, etc. But there was not this hatred of Muslims and Jews. Jews were all over the Ottoman Empire, and they thrived. And that's why you had Jews in Iran, Syria, Turkey, and yes, in Jerusalem, etc. Now there is 1,000 times the animosity. It's because the Palestinians say, who's oppressing me? Now they're wrong, it's not just Jews, right? But from their perception, they go, the Jews next door, they don't let me have my own land, they kicked me out of that place, I used to live right there. Well, what do you think they're going to say? The natural human reaction, and it's a wrong one, but the natural reaction is going to be, I hate those guys.
But aren't their leaders oppressing their own people too? Come on
Of
now.
course!
Come on now.
But Joe...
On purpose.
But leaders oppress their own people all across the world. That's a harder issue to solve.
But to foster this animosity toward Israel?
Okay. But you know what also fosters the animosity? When you say, as your proposal says, not only am I occupying you, I'm going to occupy you forever. I'm never going to give you your land.
Well, what's fascinating is the Palestinians, the Arabs, would live much better and freer and more prosperous under Israeli rule. They do right now. Look, Cenk, if the Palestinians would sit down at a table and say, that's it, Israel, I love you, you got a right to exist, I'm not going to try to blow you off the face of the earth, Israel is dying to cut a deal. They always will be.
Categorically untrue.
They always will be.
No, because Mahmoud Abbas, who controls most of the territory in the West Bank, said, we have a right to exist. We'd love to do a two-state. We love you. We'd love to have a great relationship with you. And not only am I not going to blow you up, I'm going to the United Nations and choosing the diplomatic path. Israel gets more mad at that than they do at the violence and at the terrorism.
They play both sides. And then he goes to his own people and he says, kill the Jews,
and
kill the Israelis.
What does Netanyahu say to his own side? And what would you say if Illinois was occupied? And they said, hey, listen, Joe, man, why don't you just mosey on over to Indiana where your people are? We've not given Illinois to you name it, okay? And that's a sad day for you. You're either going to live under the barrel of my gun or you're going to mosey on along. Your house is now my house. Get the hell out of here.
Put the terrorism down. Put the guns down. Acknowledge that Israel has a right.
Will Israel put their guns down? Okay, so first of all, I hate the terrorism. It's a totally wrong strategy. It's stupid, it's counterproductive, and it's immoral. So I agree with you that they should put their guns down. But we're never even-handed. Okay, great. Well, Israel, you put your guns down, and then let's... Well, they won't do that, right? Oh, I don't mean in Israel. I mean in the occupied territories, right?
I think they would in it. I mean, I get mad at them because I think they're so anxious to cut a deal. Most of Israel, and by the way, Netanyahu may lose this spring, most of Israel still wants this two-state solution. They're desperate for it.
They certainly don't act that way.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, Joe, I mean, come on. You can't say to people, you've lived here for centuries, you've lived here for, some of them for millennium, and this is your farm, this is your land, that's your olive tree over there, and you grew up over here, and your kids grew up over here. Now, skedaddle over to Jordan.
their leaders have purposely kept them down for generations. Cenk, you know that's true.
But Joe,
for generations.
That's an excuse.
On purpose.
So what if I said to you, okay, your leaders in Illinois are often corrupt. That's true. So I'm going to help you out by stealing your land and your home and your property because of what? Blame your own leaders. Your leaders were corrupt. I had to take your land.
This is what drives me bonkers about you because, again, you're right, but it's a matter of degree. Yeah, there are rotten Christians around the world and there are rotten Jews around the world. But right now, in this day and age, it's a matter of degree. We got a lot more rotten Muslims around the world. I get that every religion has their issues, but you can't deny, and I loved your show with Sam Harris, because I think you two are fascinating together. There's something going on with Islam right now that's got to be addressed that's bigger than the Palestinian thing.
Okay, so look, the Palestinian thing, by the way, contributes to making Islam far more fundamentalist than it used to be. Salman Rushdie gives the same speech. I had the same experience. When I was growing up, Turkey was far more secular. India, Pakistan, they were far more secular, okay? Now, Turkey's always been incredibly secular, Pakistan not as much, but they've all moved it in the fundamentalist direction, okay? Partly because we keep invading countries and they feel powerless, right? They're like, God damn it, Iraq didn't do 9/11. You guys came and attacked them. You tore the country apart. And there's not a goddamn thing I can do about it because we don't have an air force,
okay,
right?
So something you
the Palestinians, it was their land, and now all of a sudden they've been occupied for 47 years. It's not a goddamn thing they can do about it. So they go, when were we in charge? When was things going well for Muslims? Oh, back during the time of Muhammad and when we were more Muslim, when we were more fundamentalist. By the way, they're wrong about that. During the great Muslim empires, they were more liberal than the rest of the world.
Okay, so something you and I agree on.
Okay.
Get America out of that region, outside of my sacredness for Israel. Get out of the religion. The history of these Muslim countries has got to be written by them and not by us, not by outsiders. You got this Syrian civil war, let them go at each other and kill each other. Whatever's going on in Iraq, let them decide what they want to do in Iraq. Get out, pull out. I think America should pull out and just say, look, we're going to have a strong defense. Don't you dare attack us. Don't attack Israel. But gang, your life and your future is yours. We're staying out of the thing.
So you have a more libertarian position.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I could respect that. And I'm actually a tiny bit more interventionist than you guys, but certainly a lot less interventionist than our current government, whether it's Republican or Democrat. Okay. So okay, again, another thing that we disagree on, and vehemently so, but I'll move on from it. I think our positions are clear. So now I want to talk about, what your time in Congress was like, because that's interesting. And not a lot of people have been in Congress. It's a fascinating time. So what percentage of your time was spent fundraising?
That was a pretty bad fundraiser. Maybe 2 to 3 hours a day.
So, and you were on the low side.
That's the low side.
Yeah.
I wasn't very good.
So I think that, some people who are really knee-deep in politics know this, but the great majority of American people do not know this. So out of an 8-hour day, spent 10-hour day?
It's a 15-hour day, easily.
Okay. Spending 2 to 3 hours a day, however long you're working, right? And look, there's a lot of congressmen and senators who aren't working 8 hours,
Cenk, you're right
15,
about that.
Right?
You're right about that.
So the very low end of that is 2 to 3 hours calling people, right? Saying, hey, can you give me money for my campaign? And that starts when?
I was in a contested district, so it started the day after I got elected to gear up for the
Okay, I want the audience to understand that. Okay. And Joe's right in that 2 to 3 hours is definitely the low end, and there's not just Republican, but Democratic memos.
No doubt.
That say you must spend at least 50% of your time, 4 hours, 5 hours a day, fundraising. So that means, I don't think people can visualize. You go into a room, they put you in a room, and you pick up the phone, hey, Bob, how you doing? Can you give me money for my campaign? Both
parties try to control that. Mm-hmm. They each have their little clubhouse where members go to make calls. But Cenk, I was a businessman. I'm raising capital. I'm raising seed money to do my thing. I just considered it part of the job. Did I enjoy it? No. And I didn't just call wealthy people. Again, because I didn't have money, I was calling people asking them for $200-300. But you're right, there's enormous pressure from both parties to pound that hard every day.
So, and
that was a pain.
And then, of course, Larry Lessig, professor from Harvard, makes a great point about this. He says, look, if you're calling people all day asking for money and they've got enough money to give you $2,000 at a minimum, right? That means they got a decent amount of money.
Oh, yeah.
And then that becomes your world for a third of your day or half of your day, sometimes even more than half your day. You're talking to people who are in that bubble.
Yeah, but Cenk, think about this. When I lost in 2012 to Duckworth, I raised about $2 million. The most somebody could give me was $2,000. If I'm going to let somebody who gives me $2,000 influence me, I'm a pathetic slug. I'm sure there are some people.
Now, there are numbers in my research that indicate that you outspent Duckworth and then spent about $7 million overall. Okay.
Outside money. We both had outside money as well.
Right. So now, but you know that outside money is coming in to help you, right? And you know roughly who those guys are.
And again, what a stupid, silly game to have to play. They all know who the outside money is. They all try not to coordinate. It's a stupid, silly game that we all have to hop through, and I hated it.
So the Walkers of the world know that if they get a call from David Koch, they better pick it up because he's going to spend a lot of independent expenditures in his campaign. So that's the bubble that politicians wind up having to live in.
And Cenk, it's like walking a minefield because you don't know who you can talk to. And then after a certain time, once a super PAC is set up, then communication has to end, even though last week you were helping them set it up. It's a crazy, crazy game, and we ought to get rid of it.
Okay, so here's another question about your time in Congress. You know, we will, and we document it on the show, we'll show Republican talking points. They'll get them, and then you'll see one guy say it, and the second guy, and a third guy. How do they disseminate that? How do they get those talking points to you guys?
It starts at leadership. You meet once a week. It filters down. The committee chairs give it to everybody on their committee. You go to these big meetings, and they give you the talking points for the week. And again, many members were better at that than I was because I tended to disagree with the talking points. Cenk, I was one of about 20 or 24 people that made life hell for John Boehner. But generally, most of the Republicans will line up behind him.
So is it physical? Is it like the memo they hand you or email you?
Yeah, you'll sit down in a big meeting room with all the other Republicans, and staffers will pass these pamphlets out to you.
So on Obamacare, say this. On tax cuts, say that.
And again, I don't want to be too cynical. Both sides do it. Some of it's helpful. Okay, you're opposed to Obamacare. You're going home for some town halls. Here's what you should emphasize. And if you've got meatheads who are just going to read that stuff rote, I mean, that's silly.
Okay. And so, you know, your Tea Party, and I've said this many times on the show, there's a lot we disagree with the Tea Party on, but there's something refreshingly populist about it, too, so there's an upside to it. So when you buck the establishment, then I'm on your side, right? And there's a lot, whether it's withdrawing from the Middle East, although we have a significant disagreement on one particular issue there, et cetera. At least we're having an actual conversation as opposed to the BS.
Right.
But here's my question. What happened to the Tea Party with the banks? Because the original Tea Party was formed because they were pissed off about the bailouts, right? I mean, big government in its extreme, going to help people who burned the place down, right? And then the Tea Party did nothing about that, right? They just walked away. And in fact, most of the guys that are right-wing Republicans, and correct me if I'm wrong here, then went on to say, oh, banks, we should deregulate them. We should let them do more of that risk-taking, and especially with depositor money. They just passed that law. So they can gamble with your money. So what happened?
They were co-opted by the Republican Party. Again, I got elected in 2010. I think 62 Republicans got elected when we took over the House. Every Republican said they were a Tea Party person. BS. 50 of them got bought off by the Republican Party, and all of a sudden they became friends of the big banks. Grassroots Tea Party people out there, Cenk, they're still pissed about the big banks every bit as much as they are about big government. But the Republican Party just swallowed that up.
Yeah, I mean, Dave Brandt, look, well, let's watch
Dave Brandt, it'd be interesting to watch him.
Yeah, I'm very curious to watch his career because he came in and he defeated Eric Cantor.
Mr. Big Bank.
Yeah, and Eric Cantor, absolutely Mr. Big Bank. And Dave Brandt ran that campaign in Virginia and said, you're for the big banks, I'm a populist. And conservatives in that district loved it, said, oh, finally, here's a conservative saying the banks ripped us off. and they shouldn't have gotten the bailouts, and they shouldn't continue to get all these unfair
Okay,
advantages.
here's the deal. You got 246 Republicans in the House. Maybe 26 to 30 are Joe Walshes and Dave Bratz. That's it. 10% are hardcore. Big business, you got to go down too. It's a minority.
So that's where we are.
Oh, absolutely. That's a big, big problem. And look, I was a minority when it came to defense. Most of the Republican Party believes in a big, strong defense, and they didn't want to cut anything anywhere. We had about 30 Tea Party Republicans who said, put that on the cutting table too.
So, Joe, one last time, I got to come back to the same issue. Don't you see that the reason that 90% of the Republican Party and a very healthy percentage of the Democratic Party says that they're for the banks and the big defense contractors because of the money that they're getting from them?
Not the money they're directly getting. PAC money, lobbying money, that's certainly a part of it, Cenk. But here's the deal. We got one freaking party in D.C. I really believe that. I don't know if you believe that. I think Republicans and Democrats, there's about that much difference between the two of them.
But why do you think we got one party? I think we got one party because we allowed corporations and...
No,
but hold on, Joe. Hear me out.
It's not just that, though,
No,
Cenk.
but it is.
It's big government, too. It's
I know.
big government and big business.
That's what created the big government.
No, both.
No, wait, Joe. Look, we had so-called big government in the from FDR all the way to 1978.
Well, that's when it started, yeah.
Okay. But at that time, we didn't have one party. I mean, we had real huge disagreements between Republicans and Democrats.
I would respectfully disagree, but go ahead.
Now they all, hey, voila, they all agree to spend more money. So you would agree with me on that, right? Do you spend more money on the banks? You spend more money on the oil companies? You spend more money on the defense contractors?
On everything.
On everything. Okay, now why do you think they agree on that? Because they got money from those companies.
Well,
of course that's why they agree
You know
to
what?
that.
They agree on that because they want to get reelected. And
how do you get reelected? By getting more money.
Or giving crap away, giving freebies away. Why does Obama go out and say free community college for everybody? Because he's trying to buy votes, just like Republicans buy votes. Cenk, they both do it.
I would much rather I would much rather have somebody try to buy votes of actual voters and say, hey, I'm going to provide equality of opportunity for your kids. I'm going to provide an education for your kids. Than a guy who gets his money and gets elected by just appealing to a couple of oil executives. And says, okay, I'm going to give you $40 billion in subsidies. Have at it, Hoss. Now give me my money, and the guy with more money wins 95% of the time.
The result, my friend, is the same. We have a government we can't afford because we're giving crap away. And both
because
parties
of crony capitalism, because of the money that those guys take from them. Okay, and then finally, I wanted to ask you, look, you're passionate about the issues. You happen to lose the Duckworth. Your district was redistricted. There's a lot of different factors at play here. You didn't play well with the Republican establishment, right? So would you run again?
I miss it. No bull. I don't know. Illinois is a tough state for a guy like me, a Tea Party conservative. It's a pretty liberal, moderate state. We'll see. I got a few months to decide. I love the radio, reaching a lot of people. But I miss Cenk being there and just pounding the hell out of Republicans. I miss that.
And what's more fun or what's harder? You just said that Congress is more fun in a sense. What's harder, being a talk show host or being a congressman?
Being a talk show host, because it's like doing 4 hours of live theater every day. You know, again, you're a congressman, they treat you like you're a king. You got a staff of 20 people, they all bow, they take care of flying out to LA to be on this show. I don't have to think about a thing, which by the way is terrible because they begin to think they're kings and queens and they stay there forever and they think they're really special. It's a very easy job. And I wish more people knew that. Being in Congress is.
But for talk shows, you got to get ready, you got to know your stuff.
You know, because this is your world. It's like you're on stage and you're firing a few hours every day. It's hard.
It's
doing your own research.
Yep. All right, former Congressman Joe Walsh, thanks for coming in on the
Cenk.
Young Turks. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
All right.